for the final video in my beta reader series, and I have my wonderful friend and critique partner, Bethany. I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a minute, but I just wanted to say that this has been a series where I have been talking about my particular beta reader process in the hopes that it will help some of you and inspire you guys and give you guys ideas. It is in no way perfect. Bethany is also going to be sharing her perspective as well, but it's just good to share perspectives and share what works for us so that we can figure out how to do this. So if you haven't seen the other three, or I think there's other 3 videos in the series, they're linked down below. I have a couple other resources for you as well. And we are going to get into it. And it's super exciting that we're talking about beta readers because Bethany, as she introduces herself, has some exciting news. Bethany?
I do. So I'm Bethany Altazada, in case you guys didn't know. And Brittany and I both finished a deadline today, which was super cool. And I was able to finish editing the Ginny key. I don't have it on hand. It's somewhere back there. And yeah, I sent it out. Well, I'm sending it out to betas, and I'm in the process right now. I'm in the trenches with you guys. So let us know in the comments if you've done betas, if you're doing it right now, or if you're about to do beta readers. But I'm very excited to chat about this.
It is going to be so much fun. There's a bunch of you here already, and a few of you have sent in questions ahead of time. Some of the things we're going to talk about is just the emotionalness of doing beta readers. I considered doing the first video in this series as more of a like, hey, beta readers can be emotional and hard, but I figured it might be fun to just end this series with like a very chill kind of coffee chat with our friends and just like trying to cry. No, but it's like beta readers are awesome, and I talk a lot about that, and we will talk a lot about that. We're also going to talk about how it can be an emotional roller coaster. So we're going to talk about that and how to deal with that. We're going to talk about receiving and handling that feedback, how to interpret conflicting opinions, how to remain patient in the midst of waiting to get feedback, how to organize that feedback in a productive way, how to incorporate feedback, and some things just that Bethany and I really benefited from, and some things we may want to change in our process in the future. So there's a lot of really good things, but we definitely want to know from you guys that are here live what questions you have as we go. So I'm just going to shout out a couple of you really quick. I see Martin and Ingrid and Andrea and Katie and Peggy and so many people, you guys. So.
And Brittany, I've just got to point out, a couple people aren't sure what beta readers are, which, I mean, like, we're so used to this that we don't think about it anymore, but that's a really valid question. And also, in my Discord group, I've gotten some people asking me, like, what's the difference between, like, critique partner versus beta reader? So maybe we could mention that quick.
We'll say that really quick. I do want to say that if you want even more of a scope, there's the first video in this beta reader series, which is linked down below again, which talks all about what beta readers are and how to pick them and what they do and all that kind of stuff. And then there's also a video that Bethany and I did actually in December, which was basically a beta reader Q&A before I had done beta readers myself. And I was asking Bethany a ton of questions, and she talks all about that there. But Bethany, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think in 2 sentences, could you say what a beta reader is and how it's different than a critique partner?
Sure. Okay, let's do this. So critique partner, it's in the word, it's a partner. You swap stories and you give each other feedback. And a beta reader is somebody who just, reader or writer, reads for you and gives you feedback on your story. And they're like the beta tester. They explain what isn't working in your story and help you make it better before publication so that you don't hear all those issues in the reviews later.
Yes. And we also saw that Ingrid put in her little explanation as well, and that was perfect, Bethany. So hopefully that clears up a little bit for you guys. Again, definitely check out the videos earlier in this series to get all the nitty gritty. But we are going to definitely focus on some of this like sort of post or in the midst of doing beta readers stuff, because you guys had some really great questions. So why don't we talk about the first wonderful question that we got? And I actually have these preset here. Oh, and I didn't even get to do this, but hey, beta readers.
Yay!
If you want more information and resources, you can always check out my website. But our first question is from Jana Van Morwick, and all of these people, lovely people, are on Instagram, and I've put their handles if you want to check them out. But she says, were you nervous to share your work with beta readers? And these questions you guys can definitely answer in the comments as well. Since I'm asking a question, Bethany, we put you on the spot again. And you've done this a few times. So
yeah. Oh, all right. So nervous, yes, in a way, but also no. The confusing thing is a lot of people feel nervous. So that's totally normal if you do, especially just like having never experienced feedback before. But I guess I'd experienced feedback in college before, and I'd had like both good and bad. So I was mostly just nervous for the bad. I was like, I hope that I don't get mean people again, because I had some people back in college who were very, I don't know how else to say this, just a little bit too aggressive with feedback. Like, you have to remember when you're giving a writer feedback, you need to be very, very gentle, because we are very emotional souls and we need gentle feedback. So like, if you're ever going to give feedback to somebody, just make sure that you are very careful in how you phrase it, and that you explain why you feel that way, and so that it comes across in a helpful way versus an attack. So when I first started out, I was mostly nervous that I was going to get an attack, but then I just had the most amazing beta readers. It was a wonderful experience. Nothing like the college experience. Yes, like Ingrid said, our stories are our babies. That's exactly it. So that's a tangent. I didn't mean to go there, but now I'm more nervous in this particular round that my story is just not in the place that I want it to be. So I'm actually excited to send it to beta readers, because I found through doing this so many times that they give me amazing ideas, and I just like, it will open up doors for me where I'm sitting here stuck on something. They'll be like, well, you could do this. And I'm very excited right now.
Yeah. And you've done this a few times. So you have people that you've used multiple times
Yes,
who've been so helpful, right?
I do. I have kind of my core group of amazing people who their feedback is like thorough, and they like actually, you know, they're very kind. Like I said, again, you pick the people who are kind to you because you need that. And they're just amazing. Like, they're so helpful. A lot of them are writers also. So I think their brains kind of go to the, what if you did this? And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we have, a cool conversation going on in the comments a little bit
Ooh.
about like mean versus criticism versus nice. So I think, yeah, Ingrid's sort of
Yeah.
putting in some good things there. But I just want to
Yeah.
say that, yeah, you don't want to pick betas that are just going to tell you that your book is awesome, and that there's nothing wrong with it. That is like sort of on this extreme.
Yeah.
People that are just going to like tell you that like everything sucks in the way of just to be mean. Like, we want people that are going to sort of use the compliment sandwich of like, hey, like, I saw this and this is good and don't stop doing this, but this is where I saw your weaknesses are, and this is what was bothering me, or this is what wasn't working for me, but I know you can do it, and here's an idea for you. I saw that out of, and blah blah blah. You know, like, that's sort of like the compliment sandwich, where it's constructive, because they're not just saying like you're terrible. They're saying these are your weaknesses, but these are your strengths. And I think if you use this or work on this or improve that, like, that'll really be helpful. So definitely, if you just want people to be mean to you, then you can, hey, be mean to me. But I think it's nice to have that balance, and develop that like trust between your beta readers. Cool. So I just want to pop in there too and just say, yeah,
were you nervous?
Yes.
To answer the question.
No, I was like, I was such an emotional roller coaster through this whole beta process, you guys. Like, my other videos are just like, so this is how it happened. Like, when I was about to send stuff, I was like, oh, this is so exciting. I can't believe I'm finally here. And I sent it and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And I don't know like how to deal with it. I don't know. I just like sent my soul to people, and like, what if they hate it? And then I got, anytime I would get good feedback and I read it, I was like on top of the world. And anytime it was like a little pressure or a little like I thought I was on something and it wasn't good, like, I was like at the bottom, and my poor husband was just like, but it was my first time. Like, I have critique partners, you know, he's my critique partner. I have another critique partner, Bruna, and they're amazing and give me criticism as well. But it was just like, I never knew when it was going to come into my inbox too. That was the other thing.
Oh no, you have a little trauma.
And like, you just your heart is like palpitating. We'll get into that, and how to like deal with that and not deal with that well. But yeah, it was for me even though my beta readers, and some of you are in the chat right now, were wonderful. Like, all of your feedback, like, hit me to my core in the best and down ways as too. And that's just the way it is. And I think that sometimes we go into beta readers not fully expecting that that's how it's going to be. And so it can be really jarring if you don't go in knowing that it's going to be intense.
Yeah, because you're literally asking for them to, I mean, I said this in my email today. I'm like, I hope that you'll tear it apart, but I also hope you'll like things because you're asking them to find problems with it. So you have to be prepared for them to find problems with it.
Right.
That's hard. I totally relate.
Yeah.
You don't really want to know the problems. Like you want to know, but you're like, I don't really want to know. It's that weird balance.
But like if you have a system too of like knowing that once I have this feedback, like this is how I'm going to act on it, then at least it's not like, oh my gosh, like I've just gotten this and I don't know what to do with it. So let's get into, let's actually talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to pull up the question here about this aspect of receiving the feedback, and we will get into a little more practical too of like how to apply it or how to organize it. But another great question from Jenna was, do you have tips for receiving and handling the feedback from betas, both good and bad? So not just how we felt about it, but how did we deal with it? Like how did we deal with it well, and how did we not deal with it well? So would you like to go first, Bethany, or do you?
Yeah. Okay. You're gonna put me on the spot. I like that.
I can go if you want.
I'll be short. My answer is really short. I remember I was a lot more sensitive in the beginning, and so it was my first book baby. Like the very first one is like your most sensitive, and so I remember getting feedback where I did have one person way back in the day who wasn't as nice, and she was just like, I just don't like them. You know, like there was no why, no helping me figure out how to make it better, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, tonight, and how you can give feedback well. But that was painful because I didn't know what to do with it. So I think I wouldn't say I handled it badly, because I think handling it badly would be to answer and get mad at that person when you ask them for help. So I handle it by stepping away. And I think that's the best thing you can do is like give it some space, because when I came back to her feedback, not that particular section of feedback, but other things that she said were accurate. And I felt like, oh, okay, I can see where she's coming from. There is actually kind of a point here. So it helps to step away would be my answer.
For sure. And I'm going to piggyback off that and just say that when you receive like whether you get your feedback through email or beta books, I know some of you are talking right now about like how you're organizing your betas or finding them. Beta books is another option. I actually want to ask Bethany about Google Forms later, because she was thinking that. Whenever you get feedback, and this is something that I did totally wrong, is that I would open it right away, because I would be like, oh, I just got feedback. And I could be like in the middle of a project. I could be like out with friends. I could be like whatever. And I just wanted to open it and read it. And if it was great, like again, I was on top of the world. And if it wasn't, it like sunk me. And so like I would definitely encourage you guys like to, if you get beta reader feedback into your email or somewhere where it just like pops up for you, like control yourself and decide until you have a set time to be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read through this and I'm going to process it without it affecting my entire life for my entire day. So at least for me, I started to do that later in the process, and it was really helpful and not as like jarring me throughout my day. So that's one thing I would say. I would also agree with Bethany, like definitely like step away from it, especially if it's like a little hurtful at first, or you're just taking it in a way of like personally, even if they didn't say it in a way, and you like chew on it, but also don't respond right away, because it might be thing to like
sorry, I think our doorbell just rang. Just ignore that. That was Penny. Sorry.
No, it's fine. So my other thing, I just lost it. Okay. So no, it's fine. Don't respond right away. Don't be rash. Don't get angry. Because then that's not going to be helpful. You might end up agreeing with it later, like Bethany said too. And so you just want to take time to process it. And one thing that I loved doing, that if like there's a point with a beta reader that I disagreed with them, or I didn't understand like why they were frustrated or whatever, is after I like sort of took some time to process, I messaged a few of them and just said, hey, like it looks like you're, not understanding like this part of my story, or like frustrated about this. And I don't want that to be your experience throughout the whole book. Would you be okay with doing like a Skype call or like a chat on DM? Whatever was like most comfortable for them and for me. And I did that with a few people in the beginning because there were some things that I wasn't being as clear about, or they weren't catching. And we just had like a 20-minute to 40-minute conversation of just like those things that so that we could figure out that we were on the same page. And like I could remind myself, this beta reader is for me. They're not like trying to, say things, that would derail me. They were trying to help me, but like talking to them back and forth instead of just reading like a separate questionnaire, we were able to figure out some things, and I was able to clarify some things. And then like the whole rest of the process with them was like so much better. So if you're having like a difficult experience with one of your beta readers, it might just be because like words in a questionnaire can be misconstrued, or tone can be misconstrued, and to then talk to them a little bit in real time back and forth can be super, super helpful. So that's why I say too, when it's your first time doing beta readers, I would keep it to a smaller group and keep it to people that you do talk to on a regular basis. So it's easier to have those kinds of conversations, and you get to sort of learn with people that know you and that you can trust before you do future rounds, I guess.
Yes. And I'll add to that something that I don't know if I should say this or not, but I feel like if it was like really bad and you've done what Brittany said and you've talked to them and it's still not good, it's okay to not continue. It's totally okay. Or yeah, if the feedback is like, even if they don't intentionally mean to be giving bad feedback, but if they're not giving you enough to actually be helpful, and you're like, I'm just sending this out because I told them I would, and I'm not going to use it, or there's nothing usable there. Those cases do happen, and it's not even necessarily that they mean to. It's just some people are more into beta reading and brainstorming and helping you with it than other people, and that's okay. But I think you can decide not to keep sending, and you can just be like, hey, I'm going to stop sending chapters, and just like gently let them know. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's okay. If you, that would be like an extreme though, like try to work with them, like Brittany said. But if it really was a bad relationship, you don't have to keep it going. You can just gently be like, hey, let's go back to, I'll show you the work when it's done.
Yeah, and you could always put it in their court too, because if it seems like they're frustrated or not enjoying the story, you could always say, hey, like it seems like there's these issues, you tried to talk about them. You totally don't have to. I'm not going to make you read through the entire thing if you're not enjoying it, and no hard feelings. So if you want to end here, like that's totally fine, and you could put it in their court. What they want to say. I hope we're not scaring you guys by talking about all the bad stuff, because overall, Bethany and I have had really positive experiences. But one thing I would say too, to be more on the positive side, is collect and save your most encouraging feedback as it comes in, like copy and paste it into like one document, and keep all of that stuff so you can read over it whenever you're in the dumps and whenever you're like, oh, my book was awful. Because it's really not. You're just, whenever somebody like says one thing that's sort of hurtful, then or just like hurts you, then it just can color everything. But if you put all of the good stuff in a file that only has the good stuff, then you remind yourself what you are doing right and what people are loving. So that's another thing you can do.
I love that. And I don't mean to keep going with this, but like one last tiny example from my first book, which I'm not as worried about now. So I feel like I can talk about it and I don't care. My beta readers told me that they didn't like my main character back in my first book because she was very passive. And that hurts. Like, that's obviously like, you know, if this was your character, you'd be like, ow, that's my character. I love them. But The fact that they were willing to tell me that gently made me be able to work on writing her so much better. And the story became incredibly better because of beta readers. So for receiving and handling it, just again, step back, take it in and like process it, and it'll be okay.
Exactly.
It'll be worth it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I won't keep going on that. We could talk about that all night.
This is like the crux of what I definitely wanted to talk about. So I feel like we'll keep talking about it through the live. So anything that you guys want to know more of, we can definitely keep sprinkling it in. But sorry, I haven't been paying attention super much to the comments, but I see Evie is just saying, yes, I have a positivity folder with nice comments and achievements to look back on. So yes, definitely do that. And yeah, people are just saying that's good advice. Thanks, Martin. And awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's move on to our next question because we're only at number 2. So many questions from you guys. Let me tell you. So Sunday, one of my patrons, actually, she's awesome, says, how do you interpret conflicting opinions in the beta group? When do you throw out feedback? So I'll just start off because I keep putting Bethany in the I think generally we've talked about this too, is like there's this rule of 3 where if 3 or more people in your beta group, and hopefully you have more than 3 people, maybe you have like 6 at least or 10, you have at least 3 people that are saying the same thing and they're not talking to each other and not influencing each other. They're totally bringing it up on their own. Then it's something to pay attention to, because that means that there's a good number of people that are picking up on this thing all by themselves. So if they are saying that, that's something to sort of pay attention to and to look to and to think over and see if it's something that needs to change. When you have like totally conflicting feedback, I don't know. I think it's hard. Bethany, do you have any thoughts on this before I like just ramble?
Oh, I don't know. I agree that it's hard, but I feel like that's why if you have one person saying like something like, I don't like this character, and the other person's like, I do like this character, if they can say why, if you can really get your betas to explain the why behind their feelings, you might find out, I don't like this character, the one guy said, because they remind me of my, brother who I don't like. And then this other guy's like, but that's awesome because that's bringing tension into the story. That will resolve the problem by knowing the why. So I think that'll really help, just to ask them, hey, can you explain more and can you help me understand? But again, the rule of 3, like Brittany said, is so helpful, because if 3 people like something and one person doesn't, you're going to go with what the 3 people want. That's why you have beta readers. Your test group is to test what the majority of your readers want to hear. So yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. And the last thing you said, I was just going to point out too, just like, look at your majority. Look at like, if you only have like 3 people saying something, but you have 30 beta readers and the rest of them are saying the exact opposite. It's like everybody is going to love every single part of your story, and you can never make a book where everybody's going to love it. So, so what you want to do, sort of like how I've said in a couple past beta reader videos, is like Bethany said, ask why. So in your questionnaires, and again, I give you like templates and certain questions, and I always like put the little tag and why at the end of the question so that they make sure that they're answering that. But then also, just like looking at all of that feedback and checking like, okay, what's the majority, and are these people in my target group? That's the thing when you're picking your beta readers. You can have some outliers. It's always good to have like just different people that aren't in your target readership. But if you have the majority of people that are, then you can do that market research through your beta readership too, and say like, okay, all of these people are in my target readership and like 80% love it. Like that's pretty good. So yeah.
People are asking in the comments, I guess I'll just say it now. I was going to answer, but somebody was saying like, do we beta read? And I was like, yeah, we both beta read in the past, and you've beta read for me, and we both beta read for tons of people, but I currently don't right now because I don't have time for that.
Right.
It's like, it's a big time commitment, and we really appreciate the people who beta read for us. Just throwing that out there.
All the love.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was going to say something about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I tangented this. I was like reading the comments.
No, I love that question or that statement, and that's why I wanted to say. Oh, when I said this in a past video, but like before you ask for beta readers and get your first round going, I think it's super important to be a beta reader yourself, so you can understand what you're asking your beta readers to do, what the commitment is like. And I think you just learn so much even from how they run their beta reader process, so that you can learn, oh, that's a really good idea, or I should ask that question or whatever. So I definitely say, like, before you run beta readers for your own story, go be a beta reader for at least like 2 people, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. That's really smart.
And they might be able to turn around and be a beta reader for you because you spent all that time for them. So
exactly. That would be amazing.
yeah. Cool. All right. Let's move on to the next question.
Can I throw one more in there that's in the live? Because I didn't even think about bringing this up, but we should totally talk about this. So sorry.
No, I'm glad you're watching the comments. Thank you.
Oh, hey, Megan. So where did it go? My comments just moved. Oh, they were asking, like, do your beta readers do line edits? And I was like, whoa, let's definitely talk about that, because while you might want to do that, typically beta readers come in the developmental stage. So they're helping you with like the plot and the characters and all that big picture stuff. And I've had to ask my betas, like, hey guys, please don't worry about grammar right now. Please don't worry if I like repeat words, because I do that. Don't worry if I spell things wrong, because it just doesn't matter right now. Because if I end up deleting that entire chapter because the story's wrong, who cares? Like it won't matter. So beta readers come like before your editor, and then your editor will kind of help you with that line editing stuff. And then you could, work with beta readers more, but typically you're going to like use beta readers more for the developmental stuff. And I just want to throw that in there before we keep going.
Yes, agreed. And again, if you go back and watch the series, again, there's videos, all of that kind of stuff is in there as well. What you're asking them, what you're not asking them to do, because just like Bethany said, it's not worth it to have them change all those little things or focus on all of those things and spend their time, because they might end up wasting it, because you're going to throw possibly whole scenes out. So
yeah,
I love it.
Sorry to derail again.
No, you don't have to be sorry at all. I love it. It's a great opportunity to be like, it's already there. So all that stuff is linked down below.
Yay.
All right. So next question is just a fun one, I think, because Jen is just, you remain patient while waiting for feedback, and she is in it right now. So she's saying the suspense is killing me. Yeah. Bethany, any thoughts on that?
I am so impatient. I have no help for you. Sorry. How about you? Do you have any tips? I could use some tips.
I don't know that I practically thought about it this way, because I'm such like, okay, I can't focus on this, so I'm going to do something else. But like, that's what I do, is I'm just like, okay, like this is out of my hands now, different project. So it could be working on a different story. Like, I think you should always be working, like sort of have like 2 stories in the works, kind of, because when you to take a break from one and step away from one, or one is with an editor, beta reader, CP, whatever, you can start working on the next one, because books take forever to write and put together and publish. And so you can take a break by switching to a writing project. I have plenty of other like business type projects or things that I'm doing with the writing community that I focus on. So I sort of have seasons where I'm doing like more writing. And then I'm sort of switching to like seasons of more business. And then as I'm getting beta feedback, I'm then taking a little time to like read through it, take some notes, organize it, and then I try to like move on. Otherwise, you are just like sitting there twiddling your thumbs and being like,
yeah. Although I will say, thinking it over, both you and I are an edit as you go kind of person, because you edited it all the way through. You were like working on it as you sent it, chunks out. I've been working on it as I send chunks out. I just I haven't found the ability in me to finish a whole story and call it good enough and send it out. Like, I always want to keep editing it. So the fact that we're editing it also keeps us from like looking for feedback because we're like, I don't have time for feedback yet. I'm still sending it out. I'm still working on it. So
Yes. No, that's so true. That's so true.
somebody else in the comments
So
also said, oh, sorry, I did it again.
no,
Somebody in the comments wanted to know the difference between ARC readers and beta readers. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a really good question too, because we don't talk about that very often. But ARC readers, it stands for Advanced Reader Copy. So they are technically beta readers because it's before publication. So they're like another beta group. And you could technically use feedback, and I have, if there are things that are wrong, but usually they're not giving you feedback in that case. ARC readers are more, they're going to be leaving reviews for the world to see. They're not going to be giving you the reviews, that feedback. They're going to be doing it for the world. So you want your book to be pretty much solid by the time you send it to an ARC reader.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like, if we're going to look at like the timeline, right? It's like you write a draft or two,
or 5,
usually second or 5. You send to a critique partner, which both of us always are like, get one of those.
Yeah.
This is super. Critique partner, you get feedback, you do an edit. And if you feel like you're ready, you can go to beta readers. And then you do an edit. And you could do multiple rounds of beta readers. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then depending on which publication you're going self or traditional or whatever, probably work with an editor at some point. So like an official like editor person, work on sharpening that up. And then when the book is like as basically done, right, you're giving it to ARC readers. And I think though, if they do pick out like any typos, I mean, you could do proofreaders before.
Proofreaders too.
So proofreaders before the ARC people.
And sometimes, and even in traditional publishing, they'll send out ARCs before they've finished. Like they'll be like, hey, there's going to be typos. Just when you get an ARC, you kind of expect it to not be the final. So those stages are a little iffy, but
So if you're looking for like sort of a timeline, that's sort of generally the timeline, and hopefully that makes sense with all the different people that you interact with. And all of those people are like the gatekeepers, right? The people that are helping you not the fool of yourself when you publish that book. So if you're not going through those stages and you're publishing books and people aren't reading them or giving good reviews, it might be because you're not having those gatekeepers. You're not like having those stages of people that can help you improve your story before you put it out there. So
that's a really good way to put it. I love that.
Yeah. Cool.
But back to what you were saying about this question. I interrupted about the being patient.
That's basically it. So if you're more of an editor as you go, I guess like you keep doing that. And if you're not, like switch to a different project and focus elsewhere, give your brain a break. And then as the stuff comes in, you can decide what you want to do with that, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so next question. How can you organize feedback so it's easier to sift through and figure out what to apply?
Good question.
So I'm going to be totally transparent and just say that I want to change how I did it from this past time. I had the best of intentions to organize as I got feedback back. And what I started doing, I think this was good, is like as I was reading feedback, I would highlight in different colors so that like a certain color was like, hey, this is like a thing that was good. Another color was like a critique or like a thing that I should fix. Another color was like quick fixes. So if it was like just a matter of like, you know, this character got dropped or this like whatever, then it was sort of that. So I would highlight so that when I went back, I could like delineate things. But it's still like a ton of feedback. Like I ended up having like 9 at the end, and it was fun to go through.
Oh no.
So in my last video, if you watch the last video, I show you how I set everything up so it was easy to do the first part of organizing, but now me actually compiling all of that feedback has been a challenge. So I don't know, Bethany, if you have learned any tricks of the trade. I could probably throw some more ideas out there. You have a system.
Well, I will say Google Docs is a lifesaver already. So I haven't officially come out of it yet since I only just begun, but I can say that actually, let me just rewind. I would take all their feedback. I would have questionnaires. I would cut the questionnaire and like just keep that section and not keep the story. And then I would take everybody's answers and like individually, manually go one by one and compile them into the sections, you know? So like, what did you think of this character? Grab it from this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, and like compile it all into one Word doc. That is a nightmare, not because it's like bad that they gave me a lot of feedback, which I love that, but because it took me like a week each time I did this. And I didn't really know how to get around it. Some people were like, try SurveyMonkey, I think. And I was like, I think you have to pay to get it compiled. I don't know how that works. And then somebody, I think it was Meg from iWriterly, said, try Google Docs. And so the first thing that's cool is you don't get the email, or at least I don't. Maybe some people do, but I don't get an email when they put in feedback. So that helps with what you were talking about earlier of like checking it immediately, because you just don't know it came in until you go specifically to look. And then the second thing is that when you download it, it compiles it for you. It's automatic. It's all the, questions, all the answers are under the right umbrella, so to speak. That is amazing. It's like saving me a week of work right there. And I'm so excited about it. So I would just suggest Google Docs. And I use a lot of the same questions Brittany does. So I will just create like a doc that says like the number of the questionnaire and which chapters, put in all the questions, make sure I get their name at the top and call it good. That was a long answer. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. So I love that. It's a little too late for me to do that. So
I know
some of that I'm thinking, or that I have tried, that I'll let you guys know. If you have Word docs, you can create headers. So you can make your questions, or if you want to put everybody's feedback for like a certain chapter, a certain section into one big Google Doc, you can make their names and like each question a header, which then shows up in a document outline, which is then clickable. So it'll drop down to all the different parts of the Word docs. You can at least like click around and like find stuff. I still am really excited about trying Google Docs next time.
Yeah.
But that is another way that you can do that. The other thing that I've been trying is using Trello to not just insert all of everybody's feedback, but as I read through it, instead of just like taking notes, I create like subsections in Trello and like put little notes in there, because you can actually create checklists in there. So if I say like, something about a certain character that I need to change, then it's in the checklist. And then when I finish it, I can check it off. So I've tried sort of a little hybrid of both right now. I can update you guys in the future video, but that's another thing. I know that another patron of mine, JJ, is in here. She's been mentioning Beta Books, which is another service. I think you do have to pay for it, but you can cancel it anytime. So if you're only running betas for like a month or so, you could like pay for just that, and then it compiles it for you, organizes it all for you, and then you're done with it. JJ can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, so that's another option too.
Oh, I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Do we have Megan loves Trello? Yes. I'm just seeing, have you seen any other, I don't want to miss like major comments here.
There are a couple that are just coming in. Yes. Long equals details. Thank you, Evelyn. I'm a very detailed person. Very, very detailed. But yeah, Google Docs is revolutionary for me, guys. I'm telling you, because I felt the same way as you, Brittany. I was like, it's a lot. It's still going to be a lot. It's still the number one thing I had to say coming into this tonight is that it's going to feel overwhelming when you get feedback, and that's normal. Like, that's normal. Don't worry. The number one piece of advice I have, honestly, is just look at the first thing you have to do. Don't look at the big picture. Just go, what's the first thing I got to do? What's the very next step? The one thing. And just go one thing at a time.
Yes.
And that'll knock it out. You will get through it. It will feel like you'll never get through it, but you will.
Yeah. So make those sizable kind of eatable chunks.
Yes, exactly.
And break them up and create checklists, and the wonderful feeling of checking it off or electronic off feels so good. I also think, if you organize things by like, this is a quick fix. Like I just need to this is going to be a matter of just adding a little bit of dialogue, or like making sure that I fixed this like inconsistency or like whatever, like make those lists so you can like get a bunch of quick stuff done and feel really like encouraged. But then make your list of like, okay, these are like the big things that are going to take some replotting or some rethinking or some like whatever.
I will say though, I did that. I did exactly what you're saying. I started small to big. That turned out to be a bit of a mistake for me in the past. I'm just going to warn you, because you can end up wasting time. You're like, you know, working on these little detailed things. Again, same thing as what we talked about earlier. And then you delete the whole scene. You're like, oh, actually, I'm going to scrap that whole scene. And so you wasted like an hour on something that doesn't exist anymore, which can be so frustrating. So I'll just throw that out there.
So maybe switch it though.
Yep. Start big. Yep.
And then do the big things first.
Exactly. It can feel a little bit more stressful, but yeah.
This is why it's helpful to talk to other writers before you like jump in and do things, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can learn the hard way too. Don't feel bad if you've like done things backwards and or different than what we're saying, because that's how you learn.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, you guys are sharing great thoughts in the comments too. So thank you for researching or resourcing each other. So you are saying Google Docs to actually like share the manuscript, or to like have people put comments in the manuscript too. I love that for critique partners, but not for beta readers, because then it's like they could have like just like a ton of, and I don't know what to focus on, but if I give them a questionnaire, then it's like, okay, like I can compare apples to apples. I can compare what everybody thought of the same character. I can compare what everybody loved, what everybody hated, what everybody's predictions were. And so that's just my process. But if you like the little inline stuff and you don't mind having like, you know, a ton of different Google Docs that you connect everybody to, then you can totally do that too. It's really whatever helps you best.
We know an author, Sarah Cannon, who uses not Google Forms, because I keep saying Google Docs, but I mean to say Google Forms. I've been saying that wrong this whole time. But she uses Google Docs, so she puts her whole manuscript in there, and she has all her betas read the same doc. And so then it might not be as overwhelming, because if you have like a 300-page story, you're just going through 300 pages, which still sounds intense to me personally. And I also feel like my betas would influence each other, and like maybe they didn't see something. Yeah, we talked about this. But so that's, Brittany and I don't prefer that, but you could do that. But I will say that if you do it the way we've been talking about, where you send out a Word doc, just picture you're sending out, 300 pages total, and maybe you have 10 betas, you're going to have to go through 3,000 pages. That's intense. And I just don't recommend it, because you might never do it. You might sit there and just go, it's too much.
Yeah. And there's no, I mean, you can go thing by thing, but there's no organization of like, what's the most important thing to
exactly.
about. The other thing that I thought right now that might be a good idea, and you guys in the last few videos that I've given you in this series, I've talked a lot about the benefit of sending your manuscript out in chunks and not just the whole thing. And part of that, especially if you're doing your first beta round, is that you can send out a first chunk with a certain like way of doing it. And then if it's not working for you and not effective, or like you're not getting the feedback that you want, then in the next section that you give them, you could adjust it a little bit and say like, hey guys, like just make this easier for you and easier for me. I'm actually going to like ask you to do this little thing differently and see if it works better. And if you send out your whole manuscript at once with a certain methodology and it totally doesn't work for you, then you have a whole like round of beta readers that is just like, it's shot, because you're just like, I'm too overwhelmed by this. I don't know how to focus. But if you do it in chunks, then you can sort of pace it out. Because like by the end of my beta rounds, I found it more helpful to ask a questionnaire for a whole chunk of chapters of like 6 or 7 chapters at a time instead of every single chapter. And I'm just really glad I did that before giving them the whole manuscript and having them do it with every single chapter and being like, oh, this is way too much information for me to go through. So just a word of caution there.
Yeah, I like that.
Sweet. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Do you incorporate and or apply feedback as you go along, or all at the end? We've sort of talked about this a little bit, but anything you'd like to add, Bethany, to that?
Let's see. So yeah, we have talked about it a little bit. I will add though, okay, so you guys, we talked about how we compile it, right? And we get everything under kind of like a header, or, you know, if you have a question like, what do you think of this character? You get all the responses right underneath that. So it's all in one place. So that's the first step. But then actually applying it, sometimes after I've kind of gathered it all, I will look at the big things, which we also talked about. And then my favorite thing is to actually have it printed out, as weird as it sounds, and to cross it off, because it just feels so good. And that's one of the only ways I can get myself to actually start working, because again, it's such an overwhelming thing that I can just look at it like at one point I had like 100 pages of feedback to go through. So I start crossing it off as I completed it. Like, okay, I've resolved this character issue, cross it off. And going through that and just seeing everything get crossed off, you start to feel like you've actually made momentum, like you're going somewhere, and it can give you a lot of motivation to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
That was my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. And I think too, just like between like applying as you're going or afterwards, just a thought there is like, if you start applying too much or like trying to edit too much as you go, you could, again, figure out by the end that like, hey, that whole scene's going to go or whatever. You could also figure out that whatever your beta had an issue with, by the end of the book, they didn't have an issue with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh, now I understand why you did that thing that frustrated me so much, because you were setting up this. And so if you start editing that,
yeah,
then it could like affect how you get to the end. So
yeah, that's such a good point. Oh my gosh.
So
yeah, I would wait.
well, everything that you're saying too is just like making me think of all this stuff. So what I'm thinking, again, thinking out loud, processing out loud, what might be good is, instead of like applying that feedback right away, is just, again, as Bethany's saying, making a list of things that you would apply or you would change once you get to the end. So again, you can go through every single like beta reader questionnaire or whatever you do at the end.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to go through it as they're going through it, clarify anything for them that they're getting frustrated about, like in the midst. I was always sending like weekly emails of like, hey guys, I saw you say this and I think you're confused, so here's something that might help, and I'm gonna add that theme so that like that fixes that. What do you guys think of that? So I was very like communicative and very it was like a little community that I talked to every week of just like, hey, my emails were like this long, and people that are in the chat that were my beta readers, I sent you like a book every week.
I love it.
My point is that if you make little notes as you go of the big things that you think you're going to have to fix, that when you get to the end, you're more looking at your own notes than having to go through everybody else's stuff again. And then if you need more clarity, you can go reference their questionnaires.
I like that. And as you said that, that also made me think of one other thing. I keep doing this. One other thing that I don't know, this is weird, but like, I wouldn't recommend going backwards to apply feedback while you're still going, while feedback's still coming in. But as I thought about it, and as you were talking, Brittany, I was like, actually, I think I do implement it. If I get feedback in about like a character or something, and they're like, this doesn't make sense, I will often, if I can fix it going forward, I will fix it knowing that I'm going to come back to the chapters they've read. So I won't edit the previous, but I will write as if I've changed it going forward. Like, for example, because this is like really big picture.
Yeah.
I had in Evelyn's number, there was like a necklace, and I had each round, I would like change what it looked like. And it had a role in the story. There was a reason for it. And so I was like, at the beginning of each beta round, I would write this little note at the top, like, hey guys, this is what it looks like now. And just so you know, when you keep reading, it's changed. And then I would just keep going. So you can do that. You can, like, if you see that there's a huge plot hole and you know that you can fix it going forward and you're editing as you go, you definitely can apply the feedback. I just wouldn't go backwards, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm totally tracking with you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Because I found it really helpful too. Yeah. To like, based on their feedback, if I saw something coming up that I was like, oh no, like they're already like not getting this, and now if I don't fix this, it's just gonna be a train wreck.
Yes.
Fix things that they were about to get. But I would not, start going back and fixing past things.
Yeah.
Because then it's just, you just don't know. And it's just a waste of time. So hopefully you guys aren't getting too confused, but distinction I think that we're both agreeing on right now.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I just saw a funny comment because Christine was one of my beta readers, and I was talking about the books that I would send them, like, books every week. And she's like, "That's
Oh, man.
books back." She did. Her questionnaires were jam-packed.
That's good, though.
Yeah, no,
Christine, good job. That is a very good beta reader. I'm proud of you. It can be very overwhelming, like, when you first get it, I remember being like, "Wow, that's a lot of feedback from, like, people in the past," but later on, you're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm so glad they explained why, because now I know exactly what I need to do."
yes, yes, and Ingrid was really good at doing that too, like,
Oh, good.
all of her analytics of, like,
Yes.
what's going on, it was like she was, like, fangirling over the stuff that, like, I didn't even know was about my book and about my character. And I
Aw,
was like, "That's fantastic."
I love that.
Okay, anyway, positive things to you guys.
Yes,
Woo.
so many positive things.
So
We
many
had a
things.
blast.
Yeah. Well, it was, like, again, I just wanna say, if I haven't said it already, my beta readers were the bomb, and I love them so much for so many, and, like, I loved that all of their feedback came in so many different forms in the sense of, like, yeah, Christine would be, like, giving me a book back, and then I had a couple people that were a lot, briefer, but, sometimes that was good after reading a really long one. So, like, in the beginning,
Yeah,
I think I
balance
wanted
it out.
right, I wanted to, like, go back to them and be like, "Hey, can you, like, add, like, a little bit more?" I'm so glad that I didn't because it was such a refresher to, like, have that balance of some people that, like, gave a ton and some people that, like,
That's funny.
kept it brief. So, yeah.
I love that. Hey, Kim. I just saw Kim joined us.
Love it.
Yay.
Are you guys enjoying this so far? I know we're, like, a little all over the place, and it's almost an hour, already. But, yeah, are you tracking with us? Are we answering your questions? Is it helpful? Let us know. We have a few more questions we'd love to try to get through.
Yeah.
Um,
Let us know if you guys have questions too, like in the live, because we'll try to get to them.
yes. We always talk like, I think we always take a while for our live streams, and we're like, "We'll do a part 2." So, if
Yeah.
we could do a part 2, we could. That's okay, so Kyra and AMG also asked, how many rounds of beta readers do you do? Why? When do you do them? Do you do them in between edits? Do you use the same people, new people? So this was my first round of beta readers that I just did. I plan to do at least one more because I think that once I fix things, I want to see if I get like even more like less critiquey feedback and even more like, yeah, this is working kind of feedback. Or if I change things and I change it in the wrong way, then I want to make sure that I fix that, you know. So I do plan on doing at least 2. And then I do want to ask quite a few of my last beta readers if they'd like to read the new draft. But I also want to ask some new people with this same book because I want fresh eyes. When I start with a completely different book, I think I'm going to want to pull some of these same beta readers that have been super, super helpful. But then again, also get new people so that I'm getting a fuller picture. So I don't know if that gives different thoughts.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, because you can't like, even though they're amazing beta readers, you can't be like, hey, do you want to read it again? Because you know that they'll be influenced by the first story they read and remember things that might not be there. It's kind of like a missing limb, like you still feel it. But I would say it's funny that Kira is asking that because Kira was going to be one of my second round betas, and I always have the intention of doing more than one round, and then I never do. And so in this case, especially, I was like, this draft is so much rougher than anything else I've done, maybe because I fast drafted it, but I was like, this is like a 0 draft. I'm rewriting almost everything. What's going on? I definitely should do a second round of betas. And then I was like, yeah, I don't have time for that. Like I didn't leave enough time between publishing. If you guys didn't know, I should have said this. The book comes out December 3rd. So I have less than 3 months, which is stupid. Don't do that to yourself. Tangent. I would just say that a second round of betas could be incredibly cool because if you actually use the feedback from the first round, you can either see one, like Brittany was saying, if it's really improved and you're getting a lot less feedback, or 2, maybe there's brand new things that you have to learn because we always have stuff to learn. Like there's always things that I'm improving on and like figuring out like, wow, I should have done that before.
Right.
So I see no downside to it besides the fact that it takes time.
Right. But I think too, I mean, unless you already have a due date,
Yeah.
like you're only, again, creating more gatekeepers for
Hmm.
yourself. Sure,
Exactly.
the book is in the best state possible. So it might take longer, but then on the flip side, hopefully you catch some more things
Yes.
that, yeah, you don't catch it later. So love that. I'm going to keep us moving forward. So
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good.
is Christine also, I see a Q here. I love you guys want to put Q's and colons so I know where like questions are to highlight them. Christine says, would you guys be willing to mention or type other methods of compiling feedback? I definitely want to do more research on the Google Forms. I feel like we mentioned a bunch, but can you think of any other ones, Bethany?
Mm. The Survey Monkey is the only one I can think of. Any kind of survey, basically, that would compile it for you, because I think personally, almost everybody, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but almost everybody would probably want to see all the answers in the same place, right? So if you're getting either email answers or Word doc answers or whatever, that's all coming in from separate places, at least for me, to use that rule of three and to know where people are agreeing, I have to see it together and I have to merge them all. So why not get something that will do that for you? And like, that is why, again, Google Forms is changing my life right now because it's already compiled. I'm so excited.
Yeah, when you get that all
Yeah.
done, I'd love to see like a video, like
Yeah.
how that all works for you, because that sounds really awesome. The other thing is, I think Christine is beta books that we mentioned before that you can check
Oh,
out.
yes. Yes.
That will compile stuff for you and keep everything
Mhm.
in place. My only thing is like as a beta reader myself, like I try to like sort of take notes on the answers to the questions as a beta reader for somebody else. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't always fill out the whole form like right away. So if you do like Google Forms or something, and you have beta readers that want to take their time with questions, you could always ask them to write their answers in like a Word doc and then paste
Mm-hmm.
the survey when they're
Yeah.
ready, just to like give them some, so they're not like pressured of like I have to answer all.
Yeah. Give them some direction.
Right, right. Because
Yeah.
for me, I know like I sort of do it a little bit in stages. Um, cool. Okay. I'm going to go to our next question and let me know, Bethany, if you see any others.
Okay.
Um, oh, this one's from Ingrid, and she says, what are the top things that made the beta process worth it? Did you learn anything surprising?
Oh, okay. You start this one. I gotta think.
Okay. I mean,
Hmm.
120 million%, yes.
Yeah.
But the top things I think that made it worth it is like one, I got confirmation of things that I was doing right. And I think otherwise, like I know that I start second guessing myself and start being like, I need to change like this whole character. I need to thing. And like when you get the feedback of like it's working, then you're like, okay, like I'm freaking out for nothing and I need to just like keep moving forward. The other side of it is sometimes you know it and sometimes you don't know it, but you learn things that you need to fix, or
Mhm.
weaknesses that you have as a writer in general, that you wouldn't know otherwise. And so I think that that was just like the biggest thing for me of just like getting those questions answered. And yes, I had CPs, but those are only two people. And I think
Mhm.
to get like a bigger like scope of people, especially because I talked to Bethany about all like the reasoning behind the decisions and the characters. And so she has all this backstory
Yeah.
that
I'd
people
kind of gotten it spoiled, right?
right. And so like I needed people that just had a blank slate that could just like
Yeah.
jump in and tell me for sure. So I think just getting that feedback, both good and bad, was like, yes, like lifting me up, confirming. Like that was doing beta readers was the thing that I got feedback back of like, yeah, your manuscript isn't perfect, but it's in a good enough place to submit to Pitch Wars if you tweak this and that. And so I'm submitting to Pitch Wars next week and I'm super excited. And it's really like a big reason is because I got really great feedback from my beta readers.
Yeah.
So it can be a bolster and it can also be like a humbling, like, but like, this is what I need to research. This is what I need to work on. This is what I need to do as a writer to get better. So
Yeah. I love that. And I feel like personally the feedback that people give, especially when it comes to like how do I even say this? Like just random ideas that betas will be like, one of my favorite questions is like, do you have any predictions, for instance? And they will be like, oh, I think that this is going to happen. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even consider that, but now it's going to happen, so you can almost, it's like a collaboration where you're working with them, and just knowing how much they're going to help you. Oh my gosh, it's so worth it. 110% or 120 million, like Brittany said. It's so worth it.
And the thing with that, so that just reminded me too, like so again, I'm going to shout out Ingrid because she would like psychoanalyze my characters, things about my characters that I didn't even realize.
I love that.
Sometimes I was like, yes, she so gets it. And sometimes I was like, she so gets it, but she knows it more than I do. Like how, so it's like, it was giving me all of this, like even more depth into my character and like why they were doing what they were doing, because that's the kind of beta reader she was. So that was super helpful. And then other, like I got to work with JJ, who's still here, and there were sometimes that she was like, I was like, oh, I'm like having problems with like this plot point or like what to do in this scene, and because we were talking outside of the questionnaire, she got to be like, well, do you want to bounce things off of me? And I was like,
oh, cool.
Spoil a scene.
I like
that. She's like, that's okay. So then I would explain where I was, and she was like, okay, well, what if you did this or what if you did that? And like I didn't always take every single thing that she said, but it was a good like bouncing off point to be like, I didn't even think about how I could like use that or do that. And sometimes like you're too close to the manuscript and your beta readers are reading it for the first time. So it's like they see the connections, especially because they're reading it all at once. They see connections that you don't. And so it's just like, like brain bomb, like,
yeah.
You need to do that right now. So,
yes. And especially when you said that about how they would talk about your characters and just like know them so well. That reminded me also that happened to me too, where I kind of would see my characters, if I'm being really, really honest and totally transparent, as a little bit flat, almost like a little bit two-dimensional still when I'm in the beta reader process. Like I haven't got to know them well enough. And then when the beta readers would talk to me about them, I'd be like, you think they do what? Like they talk about them like a real person, and you're like, oh, and it just sort of brings them to life, and you feel like you're, I don't know, like talking about somebody together. It's like it makes them more real. You're like, oh yeah, they totally would do that. You're so right. And I feel like I know them so much better now because we talked about them. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like the bouncing off point of that too, like you end up, especially with the people that loved your book, you end up a super fan because like they got to have a part in like shaping or like responding to like their first iteration, and so people like I'm getting character art done for the first time, and it's like so cool to like message some of the betas and be like, what do you think of like this iteration or this, like does it match what you saw in your head as like the reader? And it's like super fun for them. So
oh cool, I love that.
Cool. Okay, let's keep moving because actually because we're celebrating things tonight, right? Bethany finished the Jenny key, getting it sent out to betas. I cut my manuscript down to the number that I needed to send out to today too. So I cut 10,000 words in a week and got it down to the count that my mentor or potential mentors said that they would take. So I'm doing cheesecake with my husband in a little while. Celebrate.
So exciting.
So we're going to take a couple more questions and then we're going to wrap up. But next question is, what are the top things about your beta process that were the most helpful? So I think we've mentioned a few things by this point that were like, hey, this was really helpful for me, or doing this was really good. But anything else that we want to share?
I'll just say again, just to reiterate, number one, just do one thing at a time. Otherwise you're going to be too overwhelmed. And number two, it is so fun to cross things off. So if you could print out your feedback somehow and cross it off as you do it, you will definitely find yourself that keeps you plugging away. That's just repeating what I said before.
Yeah. And I think just having things organized, even if I'm still figuring out like how to apply it, like fun. find everything.
Yeah.
I received everything, and it's not like just a jumble of documents. Like, so if you watch the video right before this in the series, I show you how I like preset that. And so even though there's a ton, I feel like I can find everything when I want to, when I need to. So that was really, really helpful. But I think the bigger thing too is like figuring out just your rhythm, and figuring out your rhythm for your beta readers and you. And I think the next question, it sort of dovetails into the next question. Would you change anything about your process? I think in the next time I do this, I want to send out my book in chunks of like two to four chunks. So either the first half and the second half, or the 3-act structure, or like the 4-act structure kind of deal, and get a feel for what my beta readers think overall in those sections, because I think taking each individual chapter, while it was nitty gritty and good, it was at least not what I needed right now. It's like a little overwhelming, but once I got to this place where I was taking bigger chunks, then they could see like a whole arc in the story and respond to that. And I think at least for the stage that I'm like in right now, like taking those sections is like easier to apply feedback right now.
I like that. That's really cool. Yeah, I'm doing the 2 chunks right now, just again for the sake of time. And I feel like, I don't know how they feel on their end, but on my end, I feel like I'm sending them a crap load to read, even though like a lot of them can read a book in a day. So I think they're fine, but I feel a little guilty. So I think I would probably do, like if I were doing my ideal amount of chunks to send, I would probably send it in thirds, because that way you're not spending too long editing it, because you can find yourself just continuing to edit for too long, but you also aren't totally overwhelming them. But then for things I would change in my process, one that I have just finally implemented in this very last round that I'm sending out, and I didn't even do it in the first round with these guys, is I'm starting to ask specific questions. Oh, I did the weird thing. Specific questions to the chapter itself. So I would be like, the scene that I'm struggling with, because I'm struggling with a lot of mini issues in this book in particular. I'd be like, guys, what do you think of this conversation that they had in this chapter? Like, I try not to lead them anywhere, because you don't ever want to lead your betas with a question. Like, if you're like, is it bad? Then they'll look for things that are bad. But I'll be like, what did you think? Like, how did you feel about this? Or what do you think of this magic system? What do you think of this? Whatever, you name it. And I try to get just one per chapter, so that I can send out a bigger chunk, but still address each chapter, if that makes sense. Because I don't like to do a questionnaire after each chapter either, because I got bogged down by that. They got bogged down by that. But to do something that's like, just one question per chapter or 2 max, if I had like 2 issues, that has really been helping me.
Yeah, for sure. So. Yeah. So try things out, guys. Yes. Like if you feel like what we're saying is resonating and you want to do chunk, try that. And then if you feel like you didn't get enough feedback, next time do more detailed, or vice versa. But that's the beauty of maybe doing multiple rounds or sending it out in chunks, is that you can adjust things and figure out what will work best for you. I really love this question too. Christine, such great. She says, if possible, to be vague about it, but are you willing to share any personal epiphanies you had with your stories?
Oh my gosh.
One came to mind for me, so I'll start.
Okay, you start.
But yeah, I think for me, like I realized that I possibly started my book in the wrong spot. I maybe need to start it about 20 minutes earlier. So that was, without being too specific, sort of like, basically, most of you guys that are beta readers were beta readers for me. By the time we got to the 3rd or 4th chapter, you were like, and I had like a rating system of like 1 through 5 and like a qualifier of what each of those numbers meant. But you all were like high 3s, high 4s by the time we got to like the 3rd or 4th chapter. And it was in those first 2 chapters that it was like, this is good, but like we're a little shaky, or we're not connecting to the main characters quite as much as like I hoped. And so for me, that was like an epiphany of like, okay, maybe I'm starting in the wrong place, or I need to like sort of not do as much world building and maybe focus on character a little bit more. So that was one epiphany for me.
I like that. That's really cool. I don't know if I can think of anything like super amazing, but I did just have one of my betas for this round who also read The Stolen Kingdom, and she was like, she just wrote to me like yesterday. She's like, you used my, feedback on the auction scene. And she was like super excited. And I'm like, yeah, that, I don't know if that counts as an epiphany, but just like little things that people will write to me. Like in that instance, she goes, I've been to an auction. This is how it felt. This is what happened. I accidentally bid on, she's like, I bid on myself. Like she'd bid and no one else had bid. And then she bid again and they like made fun of her. And I was like, that's hilarious. And I used it. So I don't know if that's really an epiphany, if that really answers the question, but it's an example of how much fun you can have working with your beta.
Yeah, like getting new ideas and being like, oh, this would beef up this scene. Yeah, for sure. So hopefully that was good to hear, you guys. Let's see. I think I have like 2 more like big questions and then we can wrap up. So Cam, also great questions that she submitted, said, what did you learn about yourself as a writer doing the beta reader process? What do you plan to work on for future books? And I'm just going to say up front too, like, and I showed this in a previous beta reader video, but I did an end of book questionnaire. So I had sections that they were responding to with different questionnaires, but then I did a full, like, you finished the book, these are end of book questions. And one of them was, what were the strengths of this book? And I might even said strengths as a writer, that was implied. And what were the weaknesses? And so it was really clear by the end to then say, okay, I need to work on this, or these are my strengths and like I need to keep leaning into this because people. So some of like my strengths were like the character building. I have like 5 characters that are like pretty central, and a lot of my betas felt like I developed them pretty well and like they really love them. So I was like, yay! And the other thing was like world building, which was great. So I'm like, yes, like that's what I love. I'm so excited that you guys love it. And then some of my weaknesses was more like I did a little info dumping sometimes or a little more telling. And so I could be doing more showing and stuff like that. I'm trying to think. I know there was some other big one that I'm not remembering at the moment, but like things like that I could go into like that next book. So Cam says, what do you plan to work on for future books? Like those kind of things I can pull forward and be like, okay, I need to pay attention to this, forward.
I love that. I think that telling versus showing one, by the way, is super normal because that is still an issue that I have. I think it's normal to deal with that, and like we all grow. We're all growing in that. But my answer would be 2 things. I would have a little bit of a world building issue. Like I love world building, and so it would be fine. And then they'd be in like this blank room, where there's like, where are we? Who's doing what? What's happening? Like there's no visuals at all. So it was fun my beta readers would point out like, hey, I can't really picture this place. And to catch myself and realize that a lot of times, I think they called it the talking head syndrome. And I don't do it all the time, but every once in a while I would have just talking heads. Like when I couldn't picture where they were myself, I just sort of skipped it and let them do their thing without interacting with the environment at all. And then my other issue was always, I learned that I have slightly flat characters and it takes me a while to get to know them. So I have been working on this. It's not like a future thing. I have been working on this for so long. And so I feel like because my beta readers showed me ways to make them rounder, and they would point out like, hey, I really can picture who they are here and things like that. And they could show me where it's good versus not good. That has helped me a lot to make stronger characters. Like, for example, if they're too perfect and they're like, hey, you need to give them some flaws. And like, I learned a lot from things like that. So I hope that answers that question. And I did see Christine asked if I think it was me. Christine said, are you going to do more videos on it? And so I've done a video series like Brittany did, but I can do another video on that whole Google Forms thing when I figure it out, if you guys want.
It's like a quick tack on of like, hey, I have all these videos, but just to show you how this thing works. We're interested. I want to see that for sure.
Yeah, let me know if that's what you meant, Christine. Otherwise, Brittany's got an amazing series that you should go watch, everybody.
No, send it to yeah. But that, and I had some issues with that too, of like just not explaining the setting quite as well. in like certain parts were good and some parts were, but I also, I'm like, I'm at a stage that I want to make sure that the plot works.
Yeah.
So like, I want to add all of that stuff in more
Later,
but I don't want to like commit to what everything looks like and smells like and, you know, texture and all that different kind of stuff if I don't think that they're actually going to be in this place, you know? So, yeah. So there's different stages too.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. And I think this is the last like pre-question that I had. I think we sort of said this earlier, but just to like wrap it up, was your beta experience a mostly positive or negative experience? And again, like I've only had one, but my beta reader experience was fabulous. I love all my betas, even with like all the ups and downs. Again, like that was like never really their issue. It was always my issue of like receiving it well and learning how to receive that and how to like dialogue with them about it. But overall, like it like has changed so much of like how I'm like looking at my book and different aspects of it, and how like I know my weaknesses and my strengths a lot better as a writer. And so I'm just so thankful. So all of you that are watching are my betas, mwah!
I love it. I'm going to second that. 100% worth it. I highly recommend it to everybody. I mean, yeah, if people are nice to you and gentle, like we talked about, it will be an incredibly cool experience and your book will grow so much. It will take it, like you could work on it forever by yourself and think that you've got it all figured out. But then if you have just, you know, a small group of people come in and help you, you're going to just have so many possibilities open up and your editing is going to go to a whole nother level. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Love it. So yeah, so that's basically what we wanted to talk about tonight, you guys. I know it's a little hard to like follow the chat and like be sharing. So sorry if we missed any of your comments or your questions. You guys were like also chatting together, which I loved, and like just sharing information. But a lot of you are saying that this was super helpful. So I'm really excited that we got to sort of wrap up this series with this chat, because I think it is like a very personal, very impactful thing and in the writing process that we don't always talk about, like as you know, real talk, or just like talking about like the hard points about it. So I love that Bethany came on. I know like she's been working just as hard as I have, so huge deal for her to agree to come on and hang out with us. So I'm really thankful, because it was so much more fun hosting together.
Aw, thank you for having me. You're awesome. Always. I'll always share.
Love it. So yeah, so guys, again, if you haven't seen the whole series and you have other questions, they're probably answered in the other videos that are linked down below in this series. I also have the first video that Bethany and I did way back in December, where we answered a bunch of beta reader questions as well. So I have that linked down below. I have a bunch of resources through Patreon. So if you're one of my patrons, a lot of the templates that I show you in the other videos, you get as well. And yeah, this has just been really fun to be real with you guys and share what it is like to go through betas, at least for us, and hopefully that's helpful. So glad, yeah, you guys are saying that this has been really fun. I just saw Chelsea said, how do I sign up for the next round of beta reading? If you ever want to beta read for an author, definitely like private message them somehow. And like, I know for me, if someone says like, hey, I'm interested, I put them on a list. And when I'm ready for the next round, like I send out a survey and pick my betas through that. So definitely, if you're interested, send us a message.
Yeah.
Be sure to check out Bethany's channel if you haven't already. I'm sure a lot of you are already subscribed to her, but her information will be down below as well. And yeah, definitely check out The Stolen Kingdom if you haven't already, because it's out, and book 2 is coming in December. So
cool. Yay. Thank you guys. You're all awesome.
Yes, we love hanging out with you. We'll see you again. I'm sure we'll do more live stuff at some point. Have a great day, guys. And we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.